There we go.
Internet.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Internet. It's Revenge of the Fifth. May the Fourth be with you.
Reference, isn't it? Yeah, no.
Revenge of the Fifth.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So, yeah, I'll go with that. That's actually the first time I've heard that one.
Ah, well. So. You've never podcasted with a Star Wars fanatic on a day close to Star Wars Day.
No, clearly, no. This is the first time for me in that respect. No, that's
yes. Cool. Also, my father's birthday today, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. So happy birthday, Dad! If you are watching or listening, I love you. I'll call you later.
Happy birthday, Nick's dad. So.
Oh boy, do we have a story for you tonight. You read the story. You're looking at the show notes, Barry. This is a doozy. This is a doozy of an episode. It's going to be a little bit depressing. It's going to be a little bit
well set up there. That's good.
What's the word I'm looking for? It's almost.
It's quite introspective.
Yeah, I feel that I feel that we're going to leave this conversation quite hopeless.
Oh, okay.
I don't want it to feel hopeless. So is there any way that, I mean, look, like we do kind of wrap up. Anyway, we'll get to it. We do wrap up with like a positive note, right?
I've read you. So just to put everybody in the picture in the pre-show, I've just ran straight off the doorstep, and Nick has done all of the heavy graft, all of the heavy lifting tonight, and I'm very grateful.
I'm even gonna put the transition to the Patreon commercial. I'm gonna put the good news there, so I remember to say it, because I feel like it bears repeating one more time. Because I do want to leave with a positive note. I don't want to bum everybody out and call it done. That just is not my style. Let's see.
The downside is I feel I'm going to be yawning through this as well, so I'm going to have to keep catching myself.
Yeah, you should throw back an energy drink or something. I don't know.
I might have a not an energy drink, but a can of beer sat here because I feel
okay. I mean, yeah, you've been campaigning all day, so yeah, you need kind of a pick me up.
Oh, I need somebody to pick me up.
There you go.
It's but no, I've been quite looking forward to it because people said, "Oh, why didn't you just cancel and why didn't I get somebody else to step in?" But I'm like, "But this is like my Thursday night therapy,
right?" Wait, am I a
almost...
licensed therapist now?
Yeah, no, you're my cheap therapy.
All right, I'll take that. Hey, if you're watching or listening live, say hi in the chat. Love to hear from you.
Where are you? Where are you listening from?
Where are you listening? That's always a good one to get people engaged because they're like, oh yeah, no, I could totally write that.
On the Now I've noticed your mum's been absent for a while. I think we've been neglected quite a lot.
I think she's tuning. I think she watches or listens to every episode. I don't know if she watches or listens to every of them live. Let's see here. We got our It Came Froms.
Oh, good.
You need your one more thing, and I think that's it. And the show notes are good because since you gave me the heads up that you were not going to be in super early to look at the show notes or do anything like that, I made sure that we had everything taken care of because I wanted this to be very little stress for you, sir. I wanted this to be a seamless.
I really appreciate it because actually I finished earlier than anticipated. Well, sort of earlier than anticipated because I thought I might have been going longer, but then you just can't knock on people's doors too late.
No,
people put kids to bed and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think of what is my one more thing this week.
Yeah, you could talk about knocking on doors.
Could do actually. There was some, yeah.
Yeah, that might be a kind of fun one. So wait, tomorrow at the lab meeting, will we know by then? Or is that like way too early? No, that's like what, midday for you? Will you know by then?
So unfortunately, so the lab meeting's at 6 p.m. my time. I should know just because they start my count at about 2:30.
Okay.
Now, depending on how many votes there are, then we'll see basically what happens. But it's not in. It's in the next town along. So if I might a have to come in on the lab on my phone on the way back, or maybe I message you with where I'm at and what's going on. So
yeah,
I shall let the lab know.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get some good news tomorrow. Yeah.
So yes, it will be interesting. Because then, yes, that we're trying to work out which
yeah, that's
sorry.
I mean, it's an advertisement, so I'm not, you know.
I hope so.
It clearly is.
That's funny. We just had something pop up in the chat with.
Yeah, no, I hang on. I'm gonna put this up, and I'm gonna see if it'll. Oh, hey, Erica's on.
Hey, Erica.
Let's see here. I'm gonna put this up because this is hysterical to me. Should I just read it? Because I feel like
okay. that wouldn't all come up on the thing.
Right,
anyway,
yeah, I don't want this poor person to be like called out if their account got hacked or anything. Anyway, I'm not gonna say who said it. I'm not gonna say what platform it came from. We just got a chat here. I was happy with my marriage until my life was shattered ever since my husband left me for another woman due to unknown reasons. I swore never to love a man again. Mom and friends always advised me to move on, but I love him so much. She meant everything to me. I looked for means to bring him back, and he never came back to me. I was asked to try a spellcaster online. I tried a few, but all proved abortive until I met the person that this is clearly an advertisement for. He is such a nice man, physician. That man really helped me bring my love in for days. He helped me bring back my love in 4 days. He came back, begging me to forgive him. Right now, we are both together, growing stronger and stronger each day. So if you're interested in bringing back your ex, lover, or lost love, here's the contact for the Great Spellcaster. 100% guarantee.
I just wanted that to be a Dungeons and Dragons reference.
Oh, yeah. Roll for initiative against the Great Spellcaster.
Have you played D&D? Are you a D&D person?
I have played D&D.
I've tried to play D&D. I just couldn't quite. I think you need, for your first game, I think you need somebody else there who knows what they're doing. And this I didn't. I bought the starter set, and so me and Amanda and the kids did it, and it didn't work very well.
So you need a quality dungeon master.
Yes.
Long time listeners of the show. Like, we're talking episodes 1 through 20 something. And he actually helped me start the podcast as kind of the everyday person not involved in human factors view. Billy Hall. He used to be on the show and really helped a lot of the setup of the show. And so he actually was my DM the first time I ever played Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, right.
And he's a phenomenal DM. Anyone who's listened to those way old episodes knows his personality. And he just really gets into it, and he makes sure that everyone is kind of taken care of. And those are like some key qualities of a DM. I think the ability to, it really comes back to a lot of those like things that we've talked about in terms of building a team and making sure that communication is happening. Like, all that stuff is critically important when you're playing a game where most of the stuff is happening in your mind, because you need to communicate what's, happening to your character, and you need to understand what's happening to other characters, and then you need to understand the spatial relationship, and that's where the miniatures come in play for like combat things. But when you're like doing the role play aspect of it, then you have sort of these other, I don't know, that you have to communicate that stuff. Fascinating.
I've always wanted with D&D. So I think one of the reasons I struggled with it is, you get basically the two different types of people: the people who can imagine things pictorially in their brain, and the people who can't. So if you describe an apple, then some people see the apple in they can see it in their mind's eye, and some people who just don't. I'm very much in the don't category. So if you describe an apple to me, I see it more as almost when you're, when you're coding and you have you have a function, then you overload it with attributes and things like that. That's kind of what I do in my head. So I don't see the apple. I just know that the apple is there, type of thing. And so I think that's where I struggled when I was doing D&D, because you have to rely so much on.
Were you DMing? Were you the DM, or did you have somebody else?
So I was the DM, which also was a bad idea.
Yeah. I see, because the storytelling aspect of it is really big, right? Like the flavor text, if you will. I think that is, you have to give yourself permission to kind of imagine this world, and then you also need a good stimulus in order for that imagination to run wild. And so if you have somebody that is providing you with all the cues that you need to be able to picture this in your eye, I believe you can get there. But yeah, if you're kind of that way of thinking by default, where you just think of all the attributes associated with something and not necessarily the thing, then it can be a little bit more difficult to try to produce that type of conversation. Like I would never be a good DM, I don't think, because I kind of feel the same way. Unless I'm kind of given some prompts, my imagination doesn't really go.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean.
Hey, last week, sorry to change subjects here. Last week, we had talked about something that was missing from the show notes, and I don't remember what it was. That we added in, like, right in the middle.
It was... where was it?
This track, by the way, this track. Sorry, I'm all over the place. This track, there's like a small child like crying in the background. I'm gonna change it. We're gonna shuffle it.
Okay. Came from.
Add in initial thoughts. Initial thoughts. That's what it was.
Yes.
I'm gonna add it again to my notes because I need to. There's several things that I add to this generator because it didn't work today when I tried it, and so it's here I'll go ahead and paste this in because I have highlighted it in red. There you go. But we can do.
I need to put my cheesy segue in because I have didn't do it last week.
Cheesy. Oh yeah, I need to mention our programming schedule. Are we 3 weeks away from that yet? If we're 3 weeks, I need to plug it.
Yes, we will be.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm. What did I say? 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got another 1, 2, 3. I think 3 recordings to do, and then that will be that.
Yeah.
So then because I'll then have to have a go at building an episode, a cohesive episode for mine, which I'm going through go through the question set, and then obviously do the we can do the you interviewing me on it.
Yeah. Did you want to still do that tonight, or do you want to do that next week?
I prefer to do that next week.
That's fine. That's why I'm asking, because today was a long day for you, and I'm sensitive to that. We're good. We have the notes, and we can do that next week. Okay. Hey, by the way, quick follow-up to last week's episode. if any of you were following along with the rocket launch, I did post those on our Twitter and our Discord, tried to post those live as they were happening. It's really exciting to watch that live. I was actually at the chiropractor's office doing my little break where my, like laying down on my neck to reshape anyway. So I was laying down at the time, just watching it on my phone, and it was really cool. They have the view of the helicopter looking down. You see the big long cable that they tried to catch it with, and everybody's waiting, and then all of a sudden you see the helicopter kind of move forward, and into view you see this parachute, and everyone's just like gasping, like this big collective gasp of like, oh, this is it, this is the moment, is this gonna happen? The helicopter comes into view, it hovers over the thing, and the cable is kind of trailing behind it, and it snags the parachute off camera.
Oh.
And they had to wait for confirmation, and then you just hear a bunch of clapping, and it's happened off camera. And they didn't do the thing. They didn't do the thing where you and I both thought they'd have another helicopter out there taking shots of it.
We even told them what to do.
We gave them specific instructions.
Yeah. I mean, what anybody think they just didn't listen to the show or something? The other thing that they did, which I thought was strange, because I've seen bits of clips of it, and because it's been such a full-on week, I haven't been able to get my life in order. So I've seen bits of clips of it. But then when I was reading a bit of a description on it as well, they said that they caught it and then lowered it into the water.
What? I didn't see that.
I thought the whole point of it was that they didn't go into the water. So they loaded it into the water, and then it was recovered by a boat team.
I wonder if there was something that happened. Because I remember on the recording they had said they were going to get it to the ground, and so I didn't. Like, did something happen during that? Like, I
don't think. I think from the way that they talked about it, it was planned. But
what?
I don't.
That just seems so counterintuitive to me. Anyway, well, you've done all this work. You've caught the thing, and you don't have plans to like put it down on the ground. Yeah. Like what?
I thought, because basically one of the advantages that we read out was that it wouldn't get infused with salt water,
right?
And therefore,
that was literally the purpose of catching it.
Yeah. Yeah, the company hopes to salvage some or all of the booster, despite it splashing down into the salt water of the Pacific Ocean. Pacific Ocean. It claimed it was a success, even though the helicopter. Oh, right. Okay, here we go. It claimed the mission was a success, even though the helicopter was forced to drop the rocket, describing the unexpected load issue as nothing in the scheme of things. So presumably the helicopter got it, and it was overweight, and they couldn't. It'll have made the flight characteristics of the helicopter go out of tolerance.
So they need to plan for that in the future. That's so interesting. That like, I hate to say, but like, did nobody think of that?
Well, I would have thought somebody, because these people are very much cleverer than I am, would have gone, right, helicopter Sikorsky's got X amount of lift.
Yeah.
The weight of the helicopter is this, and the weight of the rocket is this. Does the weight and lift, is lift greater than weight?
Right, that's what I'm saying. It feels like that.
Somebody would have done that basic calculation, and it might have ended up having, I don't know, maybe more fuel in it. Or so I've seen areas where they've had these sort of calculations before, where they've forgotten that there is like the fuel component, because that's that's a dynamic measure, or there's maybe more fuel than they expected, or something like that. Because here's more. Where is that? So the helicopter crew attempted to snag it by grabbing hold of the parachute lines with a dangling cable and hook. However, the weight of the booster was beyond what they had experienced in tests and simulations, so they were forced to let it go again. It continued its descent into the Pacific Ocean and was collected by a waiting boat. If anything said, the task of collecting the booster was like supersonic ballet. It was so complex. Supersonic ballet, I like that, the description. He claimed the mission was a success. I don't think. I would have maybe said partial success.
I would agree with that assessment. Partial.
Yeah. In fact, the fact that they had to drop, I don't think that's a success at all. In fact, yes, they managed to catch it, but then they had to let it go again because somebody didn't do math. So they've actually not, because if they just let that go straight into the ocean, that's the same as what it is there.
Mm-hmm.
Disappointing.
I mean, look, the technical challenge of catching a rocket, successful.
Yes. Yeah, now go with that.
The mission of dropping a rocket booster via helicopter on dry land, unsuccessful. Therefore, mission partial success.
No, the principle about what they were trying to achieve. Can you catch a rocket with a helicopter? Yes, you can, as long as the helicopter has enough thrust to carry it.
Exactly.
So big, bigger helicopter. Maybe they need a Chinook.
Yeah,
that'd do it. Right, one more thing done. Because the other thing that we were talking about and was the jetpack. It was the jetpack medic, and there was an article on Twitter sent today, and so I cheekily then sent the BBC who put the video out of them doing it, and I said, we did a story on that. You might want to listen to our authoritative overview of why we think your idea is rubbish. I didn't put it in quite them words. So I sent them a link to.
Wait, did you say? Are you saying you picked a fight with the BBC?
No, I wouldn't do such a thing because the BBC is a great British institution. However, some of the reporters. But no, I sent them I sent them a link to our episode, so you might get a call saying, you know, who knows what might happen. That you
didn't ask us for permission to use this story. Please remove it from all of your.
Yeah, how dare you talk about it in such a way? We're going to take out legal proceedings.
You know what? Look, we have lawyers too, and our lawyers say that using news stories and using Reddit posts is fair use because we are providing commentary to them. We are adding to the discussion. We are not taking those, claiming them as our own. We cite all of them.
We do.
And we are providing commentary on them. Therefore, fair use. Yes, we have lawyers too.
And we our assessment is highly technical, and we are both very qualified in what we're talking about.
Yes.
Or words to that effect.
Speaking of Twitter, HFES yesterday, May 4th, big Star Wars holiday. A lot of people celebrate, myself included. And they said on Happy Star Wars Day, they posted a picture with Darth Maul, who has his double-bladed lightsaber. You have Luke Skywalker, classic, just single blade. You have Kylo Ren in this picture as well, with kind of the cross-guard handle, and then you have Count Dooku with the curved blade. And I don't know who had the keys to our Human Factors Cast Twitter account, but this morning they came out and said, we're a little late on this one, but here's a whole Twitter thread on why Count Dooku clearly had the superior lightsaber hilt design. And to start, they say Dooku's curved handle allows for reduction in shock, which is crucial when the blade frequently locks with others, putting considerable force on the user. They go on to say another point to Dooku's curved hilt is that it has an advantage when considering the power of the swing. The curved hilt allows for both quick and nimble attacking, but also doubles when attacking with powerful strikes. This acts as the fulcrum to accelerate the blade.
True. Yep.
All that being said, no matter what points. Oh wait, sorry. There's an additional point in here. Let's see. It was Dooku's hilt design also allows for balance when comparing the curved handle to the straight handle. The curved handle design provides a more comfortable / ergonomic feel that ensures the blade is righted when held. It provides more balanced attacks than straight hilts. And then the point about balance. And then said, all that being said, no matter what points we've made for a curved blade, lightsaber hilt design is an extremely personal experience, and ultimately, it comes down to personal experience. If you feel more comfortable swinging a straight hilt, go for it. In other words, it depends. So
clearly, somebody who's got the keys didn't have enough work to do. I've always had a problem with Kylo Ren's one with the bits that come out the side, because the chance of self-injury with that is surely quite strong.
Is the if we're talking about risk tonight, so let's do a quick risk assessment.
Yeah.
Right? It's a risk benefit trade-off, right? Because it's a risk safety trade-off, really. Because if you're holding that, right, somebody slides down their lightsaber to hit you. Those exhaust ports on the side of Kylo Ren's lightsaber. I'm trying to think if I have mine readily accessible for demonstration purposes. I might. That'd be too much work. Anyway, the exhaust, right? They would protect your hands from somebody sliding down their blade and attempting to take your hands off. And so that is the safety aspect of it. Now, there's another risk associated with it, and is also a safety consideration, right? Is if you're improperly trained. Now, I'm going to bring in training here as another human factors principle when talking about lightsabers. If you're talking about improper training, you would swing that thing around and potentially nick yourself with it.
Yeah.
Pun intended. Now, I think Kylo Ren is adequately trained in the lightsaber arts for that crossguard hilt design, and therefore,
if you're going to do an evidence-based thing, I haven't seen no evidence of that. They've got no certification, they've got no, competence testing or anything like that. So, how do we know?
The evidence is in what you see in episodes 7, 8, and 9. I would argue you can see that evidence played out. Like, he never stabs himself.
That's true, but then also we don't see the things that happen outside of the story. The slip and trip risk for me is I just think is quite high with a normal. Well, I think it's quite high with a lightsaber anyway. I think there's if you were to fall, you trip on the body of your vanquished foe, or just a piece of, I don't know, space goo. You slip on it, and the lightsaber, when you try and right yourself, or try and put a hand out or something like that, the chance of you nicking yourself on them things, I just think, I don't know. I think you might be at a much higher risk than your standard lightsaber.
Yeah, I think you're right. And we already know in universe too. We've seen it on screen that regular straight bladed hilts are already very dangerous for those who are untrained. You see this in Book of Boba Fett, the episode that centers around the Mandalorian. He's using the Darksaber, and he actually slices himself because he's untrained. Those are minor spoilers, by the way, for anyone if you have not seen that series. We've seen that. Here we are talking about human factors of lightsabers. Anyway, thank you to HFES for that, and thank you to whoever had the keys to the Twitter account for writing that detailed analysis.
So we've got 2 minutes to go. So we've just had a new film come out in Netflix here in the UK. You must have had it out in the States, which is all about Elon Musk and the first Dragon flight to the ISS, which obviously happened this time last year or this time 2 years ago. It was in either Pandemic 1. I think it was in Pandemic 1, so it must have been 2 years ago. And so they followed like how they got the crew, basically how Elon Musk went from nothing to developing SpaceX and getting the Dragon test crew for test 2 up. Really, really interesting. Really interesting seeing the way that they, basically turned around and said, "I've got money for 3 flights. So if you fail all 3 flights, it's all over." and so they failed all 3 flights. And they was like, right, let's do one more. Just like, oh, yeah. But clearly worked.
Fascinating. Yeah, you are the space geek, so I'm really looking forward to one of these days when we have a space story for you to talk about. The rocket booster came close, but that was like, low Earth atmosphere.
It was aero though. I'm a big helicopter and plane fan, so that ticks a lot of boxes for me.
All right. So let's see here. I really quick before I know we're just at time, so stick with us for just a second. I realized I had like stopped mid-task of what I was doing, and need to make a caption for tonight's thing. There it is. Does it look fine? It looks fine.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, we're gonna take just a quick 30-second thing while we play this intro, and then we're gonna get to it. We're gonna do the show. So stick around, and we'll be right back.
Welcome to Human Factors Cast, your weekly podcast for human factors, psychology, and design.
Hello, everybody. It is episode 244. We're recording this live on May the 5th. Be with you. Wait, no. Revenge of the 5th. I messed it up in the intro. Great. 2022. This is Human Factors Cast. I'm your host, Nick Roome. I'm joined across the way from Mr. Barry Kirby.
Good evening. And how are you?
I'm really upset that I messed up that that reference. May the 5th be with you doesn't quite work. We got a great show for you all tonight. We'll be talking about humanity's broken risk perception and how it's reversing global progress in what the UN is calling a spiral of self-destruction. And later, we're going to answer some questions from the community about being lowballed in compensation from internship opportunities, what to do if you're not enjoying your new role after making the transition into the field, and how to address the feeling of hitting a plateau. But first, we got some programming notes and a community update here. Just want to say from the Human Factors side of the house, we are going to have a little bit of a schedule programming weirdness here. Next week will be a normal show. After that, on the 19th, we're aiming to bring you some coverage from the wonderful conference that Barry went to last week. We're still kind of getting all that together for you, but we'll have kind of a tag team effort there. And then 26 will be on a short hiatus. And then we'll be back on the 2nd, I think. Or wait, maybe I just shifted all those down one. I think it's regular show 12-19, then 26 we'll do that. Yes, that's what we did. I'm messing everything up tonight, Barry. It's almost like I should have made notes for this. But all that being said, what's going on over at 1202?
So 1202, talking about mess ups, we're on a slight hiatus as well because of me not taking my cables to EHF 2022. Then we are pulling that the coverage that we expected to have. I didn't get, so we backfilling that, and we've got a whole bunch of interviews that we're mashing together. What that has meant is that we've got about a 2-week break on actual interviews, normal interviews. Which we are sorting out. There'll be more interviews coming up, but I do implore you to go and have a listen to Farming Decision Making and IoT, which was an interview we did with a local educational college, a farming educational college, and the project manager there, a chap called John Owen, where they're looking at teaching students around how people can use IoT to make their farms a lot more useful, and it really quite an interesting one. Slight dodgy sound quality, so just set that expectation up there, but really well worth going to and listen.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we know why you're here. You're here for the news, so let's get into it. Yes, this is the part of the show all about human factors news. I hear we have a really uplifting topic tonight. Barry, what is the story this week?
So our uplifting topic is humanity's broken risk perception is reversing global progress in a spiral of self-destruction, according to the UN. The world could undo social and economic advances and face 1.5 disasters a day by the year 2030, according to the UN's flagship Global Assessment Report. Human activity and behavior is contributing to an increasing number of disasters across the world, putting millions of lives and every social and economic gain in danger. The Global Assessment Report, released by the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, or the UNDRR, reveals that between 350 and 500 medium to large scale disasters took place every year over the past 2 decades, and is projected to reach approximately 560 a year, or 1.5 disasters a day, by 2030. The report blames these disasters on a broken perception of risk based on optimism, underestimation, and invincibility, which leads to policy, finance, and development decisions that exacerbate existing vulnerabilities and put people in danger. The report found that the implementation of disaster risk reduction strategies had reduced both the number of people impacted and killed by disasters in the last decade, but the scale and intensity of disasters are increasing, with more people killed or affected by disasters in the last 5 years than in the previous 5. The report was drafted by a group of experts from around the world as a reflection of the various areas of expertise required to understand and reduce complex risks. The good news, says the head of the UNDRR, is that the human decisions are the largest contributors to disaster risk. So we have the power to substantially reduce the threats posed to humanity, and especially the most vulnerable among us. So, Nick, do you find this a bit of a risky topic? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. My initial thoughts here, when seeing this, when reading this, it's like, yes, this report is quite detailed, and we'll go over these details in detail. But like my first initial thought was, yikes, how do we even like start to fix this? There's this brought me back immediately to some of the stuff that you and I connected over early on with that climate ergonomics, from kind of taking the bottom up approach rather than the top down approach from policy perspective. And it's going to take all that to really fix some of this. And there's some really sharp minds, Barry, who are thinking about the climate ergonomics issue and how to really fix this. And that's my initial thought is, how do we fix this? This is crazy. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. I mean, we've just had. Well, in fact, you brought climate ergonomics. That is one really good example of where we think it's somebody else's problem all the time, and actually, it's just something that people are moaning about, and it doesn't actually affect us. But look at what happened during the pandemic. So, normally we have an illness comes around, vaccines take a long time to get to the point where they're actually usable. You're talking like tens, if not hundreds of years. Yet everybody expected that when the pandemic happened, it's bad, but it's all right. We'll have a vaccine soon. We'll have, we'll be fine. We'll let this disease rip through our communities, and it'll be everybody else that's at risk. I'll be fine. Therefore, we'll be fine. It won't touch me and my loved ones. And it showed us just how wrong we were. I mean, the fact that we've still got it going on now in various formats, and we now just getting into that bit of, well, we'll just have to carry on, won't we? We sort of have this idea that science and everything will just solve everything, and we can solve everything without, there's nothing new in the world. But actually, that's just not true. So there is definitely something here around in that invincibility piece. I think is put for me that the biggest out of them 3 factors that were mentioned. Because we just think, it'll happen to somebody else and not me.
Yeah.
So I guess
want to mention.
Go on.
Yeah, I just want to mention that invincibility piece. The thumbnail for tonight's episode shows a guy flexing and says, "Don't do this," because flexing invincibility. I don't know. Anyway, I feel like I had to explain that. But yes, I think you're right. And the thing that I kind of want to talk about tonight, in light of this dark article, is really taking a look at risk perception and what it means, not only from the individual perspective, but really thinking about societal perspectives for risk perception too. And then I think maybe later we can talk a little bit about some of the sort of self-destructive behaviors that we're all engaging in, and kind of how that, again, individual versus society, we kind of know what they are, but thinking about them from this perspective, we really get under the hood here of the psychology, and then we'll kind of bring it back to the article. let's start with risk perception. Do you want to kind of give everybody an overview of what risk perception is?
Yeah, so risk perception, when we're talking about it in this context, is really based on the study of this arose out the observation that experts and lay people often disagreed about how risky various technologies and natural hazards were. So a key paper was written in 1969 by Chauncey Starr, and Starr used a revealed preference approach to find out what risks are considered acceptable by society. He assumed that society had reached equilibrium in its judgment of risks. So whatever the risk levels actually existed in society, they obviously were acceptable. His major finding was that people will accept risks 1,000 times greater if they are voluntary, i.e. driving a car, that type of thing, than they are involuntary, i.e. a nuclear disaster. So that is that basic element of it. Do you want to talk about really around the psychological approach of this?
Yeah, I want to talk briefly on that point, though. Accept risks 1,000 times greater if they are voluntary. Is engaging in non-pro-social behavior, so not recycling, is that a voluntary action versus an involuntary thing of being subject to a climate disaster or somebody else's actions, right? Contributing to a climate disaster. I just want to comment on that because you have kind of two examples there, but this situation of us collectively contributing to something that is impacting all of us. How does our risk perception fall into that category? That's what I kind of want to peel back here. So let's talk about the psychological approach here. When we talk about the psychological approach of risk perception, we're really trying to understand how people sort of process this information about risk, right? We talked about heuristics not last week, but 2 weeks ago when we talked about consumer products and reviews. Go listen to that episode if you want to kind of refresher on some of these heuristics, because again, we talked about them there. We'll talk a little bit about them in context of risk perception a little later, but again, that's kind of where you want to listen for that. Obviously, these heuristics are when you sort and simplify this information, it leads to biases in your comprehension of this risk. And there's a lot of different factors that are responsible for influencing these perceptions of risk, right? Including feelings like dread, novelty, stigma, and other factors. And so if you really break down the risk perceptions factors, there's cognitive factors, affective factors, contextual factors, and individual factors as well. We'll kind of go through some of them, but really they're all sort of just attributes about the risk, right? So like gravity of events or how much media coverage something is getting. Those might be cognitive factors. You might have emotions and feelings that play into affective factors, or the framing of information or availability of information from other sources. That might be another contextual thing that you might want to look at. And then individual factors, so personality traits, age, gender, those typical ones. When thinking about sort of the psychological approach, there's research that suggests that risk perceptions are influenced by the emotional state of the perceiver. I already mentioned some of those affective factors, and kind of overall risk and benefit tend to be positively correlated across activities in the world, but are negatively correlated in people's minds and judgments. And so when you think about sort of the benefit of engaging in something risky from with a hazardous activity in the world, i.e. not recycling, that correlation is more positive. When you recycle, you do better, versus people's minds and judgments, sort of the impersonal or interpersonal, I guess, example. You want to talk about heuristics and biases a little bit? Because I mentioned them.
Yeah, so obviously to do this in detail, go back, what do we say, 2 episodes, and we go about these in a whole lot of detail around different heuristics. But just to go over them briefly. So for those of you unfamiliar with heuristics and biases, the earliest research was done by psychologists who performed series of gambling experiments to see how people evaluated probabilities. And the point of this was they found a number of people used heuristics to evaluate information. So what they are were what heuristics are useful shortcuts for thinking. So, but you might get inaccurate or biased judgments in some situations, in which case they become cognitive biases. So, a few that we want to pick up. We won't go over them in detail. Like I said, we've done that before. But in some of your biases, so if you have representativeness, which is you usually employ that when people are asked to judge the probability of an object that or an event will come to pass. And really, one of the things around this is that people become insensitive to predictability. So when we're talking about risk, then their insensitivity to predictability means that their engagement with risk will be different. We also have this idea of anchoring an adjustment. So people often start with one piece of known information and then adjust it to create an estimate of an unknown risk. But you might not have the things that to make that adjustment won't be big enough. So you might not give it sufficient adjustment. And the biases in your evaluation of the conjunctive and disjunctive event will force you to make a wrong assessment. And then the anchoring of the assessment of subjectivity probability distributions means that if with this in terms of risk, you'll place it in the wrong area. So when we're using heuristics and bring them into the use of risk, then we've got to be really almost doubly aware of the methods that we are using to make that assessment and how fallible it can be to be wrong. So with that heuristics piece over and done with, do you want to take us into the cognitive psychology element of it?
Yeah, I want to talk about a couple other sort of aspects here with heuristics, right? So one thing that we didn't talk about a couple weeks ago here was this asymmetry between gains and losses, and really this is kind of a bias type of thing rather than a heuristic, but you're really looking at sort of these like gambling behaviors, right? And you can kind of think about the climate as sort of one of these behaviors where you're engaging in something that's really going to affect you in serious ways. And so people are risk averse with respect to gains. So they want to prefer a sure thing over a gamble with a higher expected utility. And when we talk about that, it's perhaps something that's more valuable to them, right? They want the sure thing over the thing that you could potentially have a higher value to. But you also, with that higher value thing, you have the opportunity to get nothing. So it's like, it's the all or nothing, but I'd rather take the sum than the some little thing versus the some big thing at a chance. And so when you think about that in terms of our self-destructive tendencies in the environment, we really do want an all-in-one solution. It's not going to happen that way. It's like, you know, the end goal here is to get, you know, to the baseline level of disasters per year. But really, when we talk about it, the goal is to get anything less than 1.5 disaster. So if we get 1.4, we've still done something to improve that situation. And the risk is that we don't get back to the baseline, but we still got to try. And so I just find that fascinating. You know, there's the other flip side of it where people are risk seeking about losses. So they prefer the chance of losing nothing rather than taking a sure but smaller loss. So this is something like insurance, right? And when you think about the loss of, like, I don't know, environment, life, things like that, when you're risk seeking, right? You're hoping for the chance of losing nothing. That means you hope that everything will go the way that you hope it'll go. Everything will kind of stay the way it is. It's not going to happen that way because we're on a trajectory of the self-destruction. And so we're hoping, and because of that, we're losing. There's also threshold effects that I want to talk about really quick, and biases. You also have sort of this, people prefer to move from uncertainty to certainty over making a gain in certainty. It doesn't lead to full certainty. So trying to slowly understand how we can better this process of saving the environment, right? So an example, right? People would rather choose a vaccine, you brought up vaccines earlier, that reduces the incidence of disease A from 10% to 0% over one that reduces the disease B from 20% to 10%. And that's kind of what I'm talking about there. When we look at the environment, when we look at sort of the effectiveness of the way that we implement things, is it not worth trying the thing that's going to reduce the number of disasters from 1.5 to 1.4 versus the thing that's going to, do 1.5 to 1.0? I think that's what we're looking at right there, right? So, I mean, thinking about those threshold effects, I'll let you talk about cognitive psychology because I kind of took the second half of heuristics and biases there.
Well, it would have helped if I hadn't actually just forgotten to talk about it. So in terms of cognitive psychology, the majority of people in the public express a greater concern for problems which appear to possess an immediate effect on everyday life, such as hazardous waste or pesticide, rather than longer-term problems that may affect future generations, such as climate change and population growth. Exactly what we've been talking about with climate ergonomics, and why we want to make an impact with it in that way. So people rely greatly on the scientific community to assess the threat of environmental problems because they usually do not directly experience the effects of the phenomena such as climate change. And another good example of this is air pollution, where you struggle to see actual air pollution itself. So you rely on experts to tell you what the air pollution levels are. And then it's only when it gets there and you're like, so that is bad, because you generally, unless it's smog, you don't really see air pollution. So you're relying on somebody else to tell you about it. The exposure most people have to climate change has been impersonal. Most people have only had a virtual experience through documentaries and news media in what may seem like a remote area of the world, so it doesn't naturally apply to them. However, coupled with the population's wait-and-see attitude, people do not understand the importance of changing environmentally destructive behaviours, even when experts provided detailed and clear risks caused by climate change, which is absolutely right. And that just follows all the research that we've just published. There is another bit onto that, which I would throw in there, in that people need to have a path. People need a guide on what they can do. Because if the target is seen as too big, and there's no direct line from their action to solving the target, then there's also a blocker there as well. So you doing your day-to-day recycling and the climate change being kept within 2%. The climate temperature being kept within 2% of 2 degrees of where we're at. There's no direct link. There's no causation in there. Psychometric paradigm. Would you like to go into some psychometric paradigm?
Yeah, I mean, that last point that you made is just like, how do we fix this, right? Like, you did kind of break it down a little bit. We need to make it manageable chunks and directly link it, right? So we're already getting to some of the solutions, and I like that. So let's talk about the psychometric paradigm. So this really focuses on sort of the roles of affect, emotion, stigma when influencing risk perception. So again, thinking about how we think, feel, and perceive climate change in this example here, people generally see most risks in society as being unacceptably high, i.e., the climate is changing, it is getting too out of control, we're seeing too many disasters, this is unacceptable. All things being equal, the greater the people perceive a benefit, the greater the tolerance for a risk. So let's say there's, some new technology that comes around and could potentially harm people because it's, taking carbon emissions out of the air, and it's, I'm trying to think of a scenario here, but basically when you think about that, it could save, right? It's the perceived risk to be able to save. You have a risky technology that could reduce it down to 1.0 instead of a less risky that'll reduce it from 1.5 to 1.4. Go ahead.
A good example of this at the moment actually is our electric vehicles. So people use electric vehicles, or are using electric vehicles, because they perceive that they are better for the environment. But then one of the locked in issues that we've got at the moment is the battery technology and the lithium batteries. How are we going to recycle them lithium batteries? We don't know yet. All we know is that we're going to store them, and at some point we expect to develop technology to recycle that lithium, so it's not that bad, and we'll get different battery technologies. But right now we are happy to take that risk because we're deriving pleasure from using our electric vehicle. Because it would be if it would arrive. We want to use the electric vehicle because that we've been told that helps the environment, and that's good. and therefore we get all that self-fulfillment, all that good behavior stuff. But we are putting aside a risk at the moment that we're happy to take because we think it's a problem that will be solved down the line. We have a lot of we're basically biased to that because experts have told us it'll be solved.
Yeah. Well, so thinking about risk perception in psychometric paradigm specifically, we're looking at sort of this highly dependent on intuition, experimental thinking, emotions. Again, we're looking at sort of the way we think, feel, and perceive things. And when you look at sort of this broad domain of characteristics, there's sort of these three high order categories in which we think about risk, right? The degree to which a risk is understood, the degree to which it evokes a feeling of dread, and the number of people exposed to the risk. So thinking about climate change, how well do we understand that problem? How bad do we feel about it? I know, my wife and I have had multiple conversations about, like, do we bring another child into this world if we know that, what kind of world are we bringing them into? And then really dread. And then the number of people exposed to the risk. Well, it's everybody in the world. And so that's really high. So, this dread risk, when we talk about dread risks, these are things that are eliciting visceral feelings of terror, uncontrollable catastrophe, inequality, uncontrolled type. Those are the emotions that we're talking about. And I certainly think that climate change fits that bill for a lot of people. And the more a person kind of dreads an activity, the higher that's perceived risk and the more that person wants that risk reduced. And so that is one sort of glimmer of hope in all this, is that the more that we collectively as a society feel that this climate disaster, this climate change is in fact something that we dread, feeling of terror, uncontrollable catastrophe, I think we will start to think that we need to do something more and more. But when is that point of where it gets too late, right? It's a glimmer of hope, but is it too late? I don't think so. We have to live with something, we have to live with some of these effects, but can we reduce it over time? Maybe. I don't know. Let's talk about culture.
So cultural theory in terms of risk is really interesting, because in cultural theory there's 4 ways of life. If you think about that in a group or a grid arrangement, each way of life corresponds to a specific social structure and a particular outlook on risk. So the grid categorizes to the degree which people are constrained and circumscribed in their social role. The tighter binding of the social constraints limits the individual negotiation. The group refers to the extent to which individuals are bounded by feelings of belonging or solidarity, as I guess we call it. The greater the bonds, the less the individual choice are subject to personal control. So these 4 ways of life include hierarchical, individualist, egalitarian, and fatalist. So if you imagine that as a grid, depending on where you're at and within it, you're bound by the community. You're bound by them social constructs to almost go along with things, or depending on how you fit within that, you might find yourself, even though you might push against what's going on, going along with them for the sake of it. Some of this comes up really quite strongly in project management, when you're doing project management risk assessment, because there is a different adaptation of this cultural theory grid, which you use to assess your risk appetite. And we use that, and I find it really interesting. Culturally, we then normalize the risk. We talk about the risk as an objective thing, because then we monetize it. So that's, for me, that's quite interesting, and it's one particular culture that we play with it. There's also been a national culture and risk survey. So the first national culture and risk survey of cultural cognition found that a person's worldview on the 2 social and cultural dimensions of hierarchy, egalitarianism, and individualism, solidarism. It's been a long day. Solidarism was predictive of their response to risk. So that's really, really quite interesting. And the fact that there is survey stuff out there that backs up this thinking. So do you want to talk about the social implication of risk framework?
Yeah, so this is a framework through the social amplification side of things. So thinking about society as a culture, right? They're abbreviating this SARF, SARF, but this combines research from a bunch of different domains: psychology, sociology, anthropology, communications, and really it's outlining how communications of risk events pass from the sender to the immediate stations of a receiver, and in the process serve to amplify or attenuate the perception of risk. In layman's terms, how do we communicate about risky things so that we engage less in risky behavior? So when we think about the environment, how are we or any other media outlet communicating through these channels to people, getting the message across that your behaviors have these consequences, right? So really, you're thinking about all these links in a communication chain: individuals, groups, media. They contain filters through which that information is sorted and understood. And so when you think about this framework, it attempts to explain the process by which risks are amplified after receiving public attention, or attenuated, receiving less public attention. So, all that being said, I think ultimately the main thesis here is kind of that the risk events that interact with individual psychological, societal, and other cultural factors in ways that increase or decrease sort of these public perceptions of risk. And so, there's ripple effects, obviously, when you think about the amplification of these messages. And these include like enduring mental perceptions. So the way that we think about climate change, it's slowly changing over time, and we need to match that. And so basically, you think about some of these in terms of seminal human factors, right? Training, education, all that stuff. So long story short, basically some of these traditional risk analyses might neglect these ripple effects that some of these communication impacts have on it, and really underestimate the adverse effects from certain risk events. And so you have sort of this public distortion of these risk signals. And this will provide a corrective sort of mechanism so we can look at these problems, these risky behaviors in a better light. We spent a lot of time on risk perception. I do want to make sure that we talk a little bit about self-destructive behavior. I think maybe we all kind of know what self-destructive behavior is, and in this case, we're specifically talking about contributing to an environmental disaster. I mean,
yes, fairly self-destructive.
I'm going to skip over a lot of this. We have come prepared with notes, but we are running late on time. So I think the main point that we want to make about sort of self-destructive behavior really is that you can diagnose it on the individual scale, but it's really difficult to sort of diagnose it on a global scale, because some people are doing everything that they can to contribute to a world in which they want to see this 1.5 number come down, and other people just don't either have awareness or don't care. And so it's hard to diagnose it from a societal standpoint, and then there's obviously ways to test it from an individual level, but then when you get to this, it doesn't scale, right?
Right.
Some of the outlook of these self-destructive behaviors obviously are risky, right? Self-destructive behaviors can increase the risk of poor mental health. But you want to give this little glimmer of hope here? What with the self-destructive behavior?
I think you can fully recover from self-destructive behavior. So we know this from an individual basis, and there is no reason at all why then we shouldn't think that scales up. So you can fully recover from it. How long it takes depends on a number of factors. So that includes the frequency and the severity of symptoms, whether you've had other conditions such as depression or PTSD, your specific self-destructive behavior, and whether it's linked to such things as, say, alcohol and things, or an eating disorder. And your outlook depends on your individual circumstances. So we know that therapy and medication can be effective in treating a variety of mental health disorders, and your doctor will be able to give you an overview of what you can expect. But when we're talking about it in terms of society, then actually we're talking about societal outlook. And so, but based on individual circumstances, because it is the sum of the parts. So there is clearly a lot of work here, but this does give us that bit of hope. I mean, fundamentally, self-destructive behavior is when you repeatedly do things that are going to harm you physically, mentally, or both. And when we talk about this in terms of climate, then we are talking about the things that we can do or neglecting to do, such as recycling, such as planning, such as that type of thing. If you think you're engaging in this self-destructive behavior in terms of disasters, well, you probably are. The fact that you think that you're doing it means that you're not that far away from it. So you don't have to be like that. You can do things differently. So if you find them new skills, then new coping skills, and practice them, particularly practicing alternative behaviors, we can hopefully live a less self-destructive life. And that could be one of the key things to take us around things like climate change.
Yeah, right. Like, we can't medicate everybody. We can't give everybody therapy, but certainly thinking about practicing some of these coping skills and alternative behaviors to, antisocial, I say antisocial, but anti-environmental practices. So let's get back to the article, because there's some really good points that they make in here. And I guess, Barry, do you have any key takeaways that you want to make sure that we talk about before we get out of here? I know, we're short on time, but I do want to take the time here to revisit.
So what there was a thing that this sort of echoed to me, and it's about how we project risk and how we communicate risk to the public. So we talked right at the top around how people's reactions to the pandemic, and how we thought that scientists will come up with a solution, and as long as it's somebody else. The first time, and it won't be the first time it's happened, but the first time I think it happened in a big way was around the millennium bug, when for years people were talking around the millennium bug, and that happening, and then basically the engineering managed to solve it. So actually the repercussions were very small, and so then people suddenly started having that talk of, it's clearly, everyone's going to say it's a disaster, but then the millennium bug was going to be a disaster, and it didn't happen, did it? We expect disasters to happen, and when they're not, then we tend to then mock them. Whereas actually the millennium bug could have been a really big disaster. Lots of people recognized the risk. Lots of people did some really, really good solid chunks of work to mitigate that risk, because it wasn't solved, it was mitigated against. And I wonder whether that was the start of modern day risk apathy, because this is kind of what this is talking about. It's we just we hear the risk, we watch the news, we all get depressed about it, but then we become quite apathetic about it. So yeah, that's something I wanted to get across before we run out of time on this.
Well, that's quite depressing. I'm gonna leave us on a slightly more optimistic note.
You do that, Gollum.
Rather than apathetic attitudes towards a climate disaster. Think about this: disasters can be prevented, and this comes with a slight warning. Obviously, we need as not only countries but as a world really to invest some of these time and resources to understand and reduce the risks that we're engaging in, and ultimately, when we deliberately ignore risk and fail to integrate it into some of the decision making that we make daily, the world is effectively bankrolling its own destruction. That is a quote by the head of the UNDRR. Critical sectors from government to development and financial services must urgently rethink how they perceive and address disaster risk. So this is putting the onus on sort of these higher level functioning bodies of government, financial services, development, those types of things. But from an individual perspective, sort of the good news here is, again, we're going to restate this because it is kind of that glimmer of hope. Human decisions are the largest contributors to disaster risk. And so we have the power, if we understand humans, which psychologists, human factors professionals do, we have the power to substantially reduce those threats posed to humanity, and especially the most vulnerable among us. So that's kind of where we want to end. Positive note, we can fix this, but we got to work at it. So let's do it. Thank you to our patrons and everyone on social media this week for selecting our news topic. And thank you to our friends over at the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction for our news story this week. If you want to follow along, we do post the links to the original articles on our weekly roundups and our blog. You can also join us on our Discord for more discussion of these stories. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back to see what's going on in the human factors community right after this.
Human Factors Cast brings you the best in human factors news, interviews, conference coverage, and overall fun conversations into each and every episode we produce. But we can't do it without you. The Human Factors Cast network is 100% listener supported. All the funds that go into running the show come from our listeners. Our patrons are our priority, and we want to ensure we're giving back to you for supporting us. Pledges start at just $1 per month and include rewards like access to our weekly Q&As with the hosts, personalized professional reviews, and Human Factors Minute, a Patreon-only weekly podcast where the hosts break down unique, obscure, and interesting human factors topics in just 1 minute. Patreon rewards are always evolving, so stop by patreon.com/humanfactorscast to see what support level may be right for you. Thank you, and remember, it depends.
Yes, huge thank you as always to our patrons. We especially want to thank our honorary Human Factors Cast staff patron, Michelle Tripp. Hey, did you know, as we're talking about ways to support the show, that we have a merch store? We have some really awesome designs over there. We're always updating them. We got It Depends shirts, if you want those. We got a show logo. And there's other cool designs based in human factors culture. So if you want to support the show, look good doing it. I won't spend too much time on this. You can go support the store. You find it on our website or something. I don't know. Anyway, it's time we get into this next part of the show we like to call...
It came from...
Yes, this part of the show is called It Came From. This is where we talk about, we find all these news stories all over the... Not news stories. I am messing up a lot tonight. That's okay, though. We find topics that the community is talking about all over the internet. If you are listening, watching, wherever you're at, give us a like to help other people find this content. The first one we're going to be talking about tonight is actually from our Discord. So this is Am I Being Lowballed? This is by V in our Discord. I'm taking out names. You can see the details in our Discord if you join us. But I'm being offered a human factors and VR development internship for a government contractor on a government project, but the pay is only $15 to $20 at 20 hours a week. $15 to $20 at $20 a week. As far as market value, I'm a first-year grad student and a terminal master's. I have 3 years in undergraduate research, with one being a self-led study on relevant themes. Another year of research here out of the gate. 2 internships relating to user research and observational methods. Not a lot in VR development, but a bit in VR research. Seems like a lowball, but I'm not a professional by any means. Am I being lowballed? Should I just accept it for the experience and the name? We're not going to say the name here on the show. Again, you can go check that out in our Discord for the full conversation. Barry, what do you say to this? Is V getting lowballed?
Yeah, so in short, yes, which is the official answer. However, there's an element here about looking at the entire package, because you got to work out what is the internship there to do. Is it there to pay the bills? Which it's obviously got to do some of that, but as an intern, you're also looking at the value of the experience that you're getting. So is the contract that you're going to do, or the company that you're going to go and work with, would having them on your CV give you sufficient experience, a sufficient just having a bit of pizzazz or a bit of wow on your CV? Is that what is the value of that to what you're doing? So I do believe that any sort of internship should, pay the bills, and that type of thing. For if you're going to be offered, then it should be offered a decent wage. But it's a very personal decision as to, dare I say, it depends on what you what do you think you're going to get out of it? Is it for, is it long period, short period, whatever? So the official answer, yes, I think you're being lowballed, but is that worth it to you?
I jokingly said take out a bunch in student loans to pay for this because they're about to be forgiven, maybe. And so that's probably the best advice. No, not really. Don't do that. That's terrible advice.
I would say we are not an independent financial advisor. All loans are at your own risk.
Look, this is a really interesting question because, yes, to me, it is a low ball. I mean, when I did my internship years ago, this is less than I got paid then. And you're right. There is some things to consider that are outside of the money. But I do find it really icky when you think about companies saying you're getting paid an experience. I hate that. And it's the reason why in the lab I put no like hard requirements over it, because you're volunteering your time. I don't want you to feel like you're getting paid an experience. I want you to get out what you put in. All that being said, what value do you put on the things that are not money related? Are you going to starve? First off, that's a pretty important question to answer. The other questions to answer are, who would you be working with? Would they be valuable connections in the future? How much is that worth to you? I think that is a tremendous sort of amount of consideration should go into that. You know, the name, again, if it is a reputable name, then that is also something to consider. Looks good on your resume, fine. Again, paying for the experience at name, though, shouldn't really be, I don't know. I feel a little icky about that. The last sort of piece of the pie here is the topic that you're working on. Is this closely aligned to your goals long term? If yes, then I think it could be a good career step. I'm actually talking to this person tomorrow, so hopefully some of these answers, it sounds like they're going to accept it. But anyway, I do want to mention that this question actually prompted Blake, you remember that guy, to enter the chat.
Blake?
Yeah,
I've heard you talk about him. I've never actually met him, so I've no idea who you're talking about.
Yeah, that guy. He actually entered the chat. He, he came out from the shadows to answer this question. But I mean, there's a lot of good sort of advice that he gave. Again, I'm going to plug our Discord. Go check out the full conversation there. We also just opened up a new channel for career advice. So if you do have any similar questions to this, I think that's a great place to ask these. And again, based on the way that I'm handling this, we're going to say maybe what the topic is, but we'll leave out some certain details so you don't feel so called out in a public matter. Again, our Discord's quite intimate, so I don't think that's a problem. All right, next one here is from the user experience or UX research subreddit. This is by Mystery to Me 120. Not enjoying my new job. I'm new to UX, transition from academia. They said they made a career change. They were in a PhD program, enrolled in a boot camp, and landed a okay paying job in UX, which is supposed to be about 80% research, 20% design, and educating employees on best UX practices, like documentation. The issue is that their product really sucks. Like, it's the most annoying product I've ever used in my life and haven't managed to understand 10% of it. They got training on it. The trainer felt disrespectful, scolds students, publicly shames them, never explained any context or provided any presentation while teaching. On top of this feeling, I'm feeling like only 20% of the job is research and 80% as they advertise. Since it's my first job, I feel like I have to stick it out, but I'm just looking for reassurance that this happens sometimes and any suggestions on how to accept a better role next time. Thanks. Barry, how do you sort of do this when you've just transitioned to the field and you're getting met with all this stuff? First off, do you think their complaint is valid? And then second off, how do you approach this?
So firstly, I think it is possible that they perhaps didn't do as much research into the future job as, so if this is their product and, it sucks. If it's their only product and you didn't pick that up, then maybe you should have done slightly more research into it, but they might have a range of products. So let's just go with that assumption. Sometimes the hardest thing you can do is admit you might have made a mistake for whatever reason. But the sooner you can make that admission, the better it is, or at least come be at peace with it. So some people might argue that saying, quitting a job within a year is a bad thing, because if you do that too many times, you have a really spotty CV, and that's unhelpful for when you're looking at continuity. And there is that sort of advice that you should be trying to stick at a role for at least a year to 2 years consistently to have that. However, if you are in a role that you just don't like, that isn't bringing you joy to going to work with every day, then quite frankly, it's a tough decision to make. But I would pull the ripcord. I would get out of it personally, and the sooner you can, the better. So it is up to you in terms of how you do it. But I've been in sort of two situations One where I had somebody working for me in a different role, who they were going to be taken over from me, and then they realized the breadth and depth of work that they would be doing, and they made what I thought was a really brave decision to say, you know what, I think I've been off more than I can chew, or you didn't necessarily tell me about the full breadth of what this role was going to be. I don't think this is where I want to be, and actually they left before I did. And I thought that was a really brave but the right move for them. And then I've seen other people do sort of similar things. I did it myself. I went in for a short project where they wanted to keep it on going on for longer, but I was like, actually, no, I've done what I can. I'm stopping. And so whilst we had money on the table and all that sort of stuff, I felt that the way that it was going wasn't where I wanted it to go. And so we amicably ended, basically we didn't renew that contract because it just didn't feel right. And actually, that was about 10 years ago now. I've since been proven right, which is quite nice. But yeah, so this is one of these things. I think my gut feel from the way that it's described, I will get out of there. What do you think, Nick?
I don't know. I find that a lot of the stuff that this person is describing is part of the enjoyment I get. If a product sucks, then like it's your job to fix it. It's your job to understand why. Like to me, it's a challenge. And so again, I don't know where the expectation differences occurred, and this kind of highlights the importance of really understanding what you're getting into before accepting a position. So I don't know. I think the best question to ask is, if it didn't exist before, what sort of things are they anticipating? So if this position doesn't exist and you are sort of filling it for the first time, what are the expectations of everyone around you? If they cited 80% research, then that's what they had in mind for you. And I'm just kind of wondering why you're at a 20% right now. Is that because there's some sort of blockage within the company that you need to break through to get to that 80%? I don't know. I feel like I don't have all the pieces of the puzzle here. Just try your best to ask questions, understand what you're getting into, and communicate effectively when you get into the role. You're from academia, you always have that backup. If you don't like it, go back to what you know. Like, that's kind of the nice thing about switching fields, is you can always go back to that other thing, right? I don't know. It's not great advice, but it's there. Let's get into this last one here. Feeling like I've hit a plateau. I'm 7 months in. Sorry, this is by Deftones 5554 on the UX Research subreddit. I'm 7 months into my first job as a UX UI designer at a marketing agency. Feel like I'm hitting a plateau. I'm the only UX person here on a design team of 6. Before I got here, they didn't care much about research, but I've tried to change that. I'm the only researcher here. I'm trying to beef up our research process, but it seems impossible by myself. They go in to talk a little bit about details about what they do. And they say, this process I use feels like it's lacking a lot, but it's mostly just user interviews and testing. I've thought a lot about using other tools, but we just don't have the space in our timelines. Am I biting off more than I can chew with this job? Is this the best place for me so early on in my career? What I'm scared of, though, is that all this weird anecdotal work I've been working on super hard to display on my portfolio won't be displayed on my portfolio. I'm very proud of most of it, and I feel big companies will only want to hire people who started their career in a more traditional position at a company that trained them. They're proud of themselves for the research process. Anyway, feedback. Barry, what's going on? Hitting a plateau.
Yeah, I think this happens to everybody at some point or other. I mean, I've been there. I've done that, and certainly being in my role at the moment in terms of running my own company, I certainly hit that quite often. Is how you're going to stretch yourself, how you're going to push yourself. I think there's a certain element here that you haven't been, you haven't been there that long in the grand scheme of things. So, but it is hard. We've sort of said this quite a few times before, where you've been, if you're that one person that's doing your role, it can feel quite a lonely place at times. So I think if you think there is more stuff that you can do, if there's different tools and things like that, bring it up. Talk to the rest of the team about it. Talk to your manager about it, around what your ambitions are, and can we develop the role in a way that allows you to express yourself in the way that you want to express yourself. You said that you're worried about how you're going to display it on your portfolio. quite frankly, for me that would be a secondary consideration at this point, because the first thing you want to do is good work. Your portfolio is kind of important, but it's not the be all and end all, because a lot of things I guess you're not going to be able to talk about in the grand scheme of things anyway. So I wouldn't be putting quite as much emphasis on that. I don't know. This one's more difficult than the previous question, I think, because they clearly want to be able to do some stuff. They have some ambitions. They clearly have some ideas that they want, that how they can do the job differently and do the job better. But it just feels either they don't have the receptive team there to naturally say about them, or they're nervous about putting up new ideas. And my view would be to just put yourself out there, and if you want to change things, recommend it. And the worst thing that can happen is they say no, but at best you might realize some of your ambitions. I've just waffled an awful lot around that. Nick, what do you think? Have you got something a bit more concise, a bit better advice than what I was just giving?
Yeah, I also agree that this is too soon to feel a plateau. I mean, to me, this feels like maybe you didn't understand the assignment. UX and research is always about advocating for the importance. And if you're the only person there doing research, then you got to do your job and advocate for it. I don't know. I feel like setting up a research process is some of the most fun. I mean, I'm a different kind of person, but setting up a research process is the most fun thing that I've ever had experience with. I've done it at multiple companies. And I think really the biggest challenge can be to get people to use that process. And it's like, that is a challenge, but it's also a fun thing for me to do. I really enjoy that aspect of my work. And I wonder that if you're not enjoying that aspect of it, is this the right field for you? I don't know. You know, maybe another company can help if they already have an established process. That might be a better fit. I don't know. I think to me, that is the most fun part. And if you're having problem with it, then maybe find a different area within UX. I don't know. I don't want to tell you to quit your job and go look elsewhere, but this is to me, that is the most exciting part of it. And I can't really give great advice other than find what you love and kind of stick with it. Anyway, that's not great advice. I'm on a roll with not great advice tonight, but that's it. All right. It's time we get into this thing we just call One More Thing. Needs no introduction. Barry, what's your one more thing this week?
So this week is just me talking about my ultimate job interview that I've just finished, which is standing for local government office, and having that piece of knocking on hundreds of doors and talking to people and just trying to sell yourself to every single one of them, but trying to be your authentic self, but also have to tailor it slightly for what their individual wants and needs are. And you've got about, I don't know, 30 seconds, a minute to make an impression, hundreds of times over, rather than just a normal sort of interview where you've got maybe a panel of 3, maybe a panel of 5, and you're doing it all day. And I've literally spent the past, 48 hours highly focused on this and getting this done outside of the work that I've done over the past few months. So yeah, it feels like the end of a really weird period of time. So the polls closed now about an hour and a half ago, but we don't find out tomorrow. So I get the results of the job interview tomorrow, and what the public at large have thought about me. Yeah, it's just really weird. It's going to be, and it's very public as well, because everybody will know the outcome. So
do your cheeks hurt?
Oh, my cheeks hurt, my jaws hurt, my feet hurt, my knees hurt. There's hills around here. I've never had hills like it.
Man.
But what a thoroughly enjoyable thing to do. The ability to go and talk to people in this way, it's like the weirdest, biggest piece of UX research you ever do. It's mad. But yeah, no, it's been great.
Yeah. My one more thing this week is, last week I talked about getting my 3D printer out and starting projects. I'm going to a Star Wars convention next month. This month. It's this month. Wow. And I have been working on, my son is going to dress up, and I've been working on his helmet. Those who are watching can see the progress here. Isn't that cool? Yeah, so it's got some paint on it. It's still work in progress, obviously, but it's something I'm very proud of. It looks very good. Anyway,
that looks great.
Well done. It's still right in the middle of it. But anyway, that's it for today, everyone. If you like this episode and enjoy some of the discussion about our doomed planet, I'll encourage you to go listen to, you know what? I got a short homework assignment for you this week. It's Climate Ergonomics. It's a Human Factors Minute. It was part of the Team C's effort. So go listen to that. It's only a minute. Comment wherever you're listening with what you think of the story this week. For more in-depth discussion, you can join us on our Discord community. Like I said, we got that new career advice section in there for you to throw questions at us. You can always visit our official website, sign up for our newsletter, stay up to date with all the latest Human Factors news. If you like what you hear, you want to support the show, we do have a merch store. Go and do that. Or you can leave us a 5-star review. That's free for you to do. Tell your friends about us or consider supporting us on Patreon. As always, links to all of our socials and our website are in the description of this episode. Mr. Barry Kirby, thank you so much for being on the show today, despite knocking on doors all day. Where can our listeners go and find you if they want to break out of this self-destructive cycle?
Well, anytime now they can see me in bed for the next 2 days. No, you can find me on Twitter, Baz_K, or come and listen to some of the interviews that I haven't done yet, but will be up soon on 1202, the Human Factors podcast at 1202podcast.com.
As for me, I've been your host, Nick Roome. You can find me on our Discord and across social media at Nick_Roome. Thanks again for tuning into Human Factors Cast. Until next time, it depends.
It depends.
It depends. It depends.
It probably depends. It depends.
It really, really depends. Wow, that was a great show. I enjoyed that thoroughly.
Good. It was a good topic, and it was quite neat to delve into a few different bits, but also link it all back for those who are doing the post-show bit with the whole climate ergonomics piece. There is now a guide and things that people can be reading. In fact, some papers have now been published. Where we made that guide, and all of the stuff around that was we didn't just make it up. We actually did some proper academic work and backed it on like facts and stuff. That's I know it's thrown it out there, but no, that was some of the work that we published at the recent ergonomics conference, and so all of that is out there if people want to get stuck into that. Should have probably mentioned that in the show, but
probably, yeah. I mean, like if only there was some independent media outlet that could sort of communicate that information to listeners of Human Factors content. That'd be just wild. If
it'd be useful, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So, but hey, maybe next time.
Maybe next time.
Oh, I'm very tired. It's fair to say I'm very tired today.
I feel like we always talk about this. It's been a rough week. I waited to take my medication until a little later in the day today, so that's kind of why I'm a little higher energy.
Cool. Okay. And how's that working for you?
I don't know. I think maybe we found the dosage. I don't know. Because it wasn't working, and then I said, "Hey, it's not working," and they said, "Okay, well, let's try this." And so maybe, I don't know. I feel like the last 2 days were very good. Or sorry, the first 2 days, I said Monday and Tuesday, were very good. Wednesday was less good. It was more neutral. Today was really difficult, but I don't know if that's because there was so much stuff that I was trying to get ahead of for the show, or anything like that, because I just don't know. I'm still evaluating, right? I have a sample size of 4 days on this new dosage. Yes. And so, I tend to give myself like 2 weeks to a month to really evaluate how it's doing, unless it's immediately obvious that nothing is working. Like the last 2 weeks was like zero improvement. It just did nothing. And it's kind of nice though that like the first 2 days were back to being very focused. Like, I don't know if you look at our lab chat, you'll see like
you got very busy.
I got very busy with a lot of stuff, like, hey, I'm writing guides and I'm revamping some of our website pages, and I got pretty busy with stuff, and that's on top of all the work that I was able to get done this week too. So yeah,
productivity all around.
What's that?
Productivity all around.
Productivity all around, yeah.
For Monday and Tuesday, anyway.
Yeah. I'll show it one more time. Yeah. And the paint job right now is shoddy because it's in the middle of like coats, and so you can see this first coat of red is all scratchy. And you can see some like bits on there. That's like these little marks. For those listening, I'm showing the helmet. That's toothpaste that I'm gonna wipe off after this dries, so that way the silver shows out from underneath, and it looks nice and chipped, like a battle damaged helmet would.
Cool.
Yeah.
No, my son's been doing a lot of the. So he's got a Red Hood helmet that we printed for him ages ago, and he remodels it all the time and is doing lots of stuff like that. And I don't know. Part of me always feels I know why you do it, because it makes it look authentic. But then he makes this perfect, and he's really. I mean, he's 12 years old, but he can make it look really, really crisp, and depth of color and all that sort of stuff with the layers and everything. And you're like, oh, that's really good, as if it was like straight off the factory line. And then he adds all the chipping effects and all of these slashes and all, and you're like going, but I get why you've done it, because it makes it look like real. But I like the bit like the finished product when it was just
Yeah.
It's always interesting seeing that process.
So while we're talking about this, there's several projects like that I have, right? So there's like I don't know if you can see it because it's black against black. This number here, so this is a little like probe droid, and
cool.
It's got dust on it, but this one I needed to be sort of immaculate because it's Imperial in design, and Imperial is very crisp, and you can see it's got that enamel gloss on it, so you can actually see, a reflection on it, and it's black enamel. It looks great. I'm really proud of it. Hasn't held together super well. I plan to revisit it someday, but anyway, so that's one example. This one, it's a battle damaged helmet. I want it to look battle
like it's been used.
Yeah. Anyway, I say all that because Barry, you're probably definitely more of the it needs batteries. Okay. Well, that's a bummer. I was going to turn it on because it's got some LEDs in it. Anyway, I figured you'd get a kick out of that because I do both.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, no, I like that. So
now let's see if I put it back correctly. It's probably gonna fall. I hope it doesn't fall. I'll be able to see it in my.
I was gonna say it's so
reflection.
No.
I mean, it definitely has taken a fall before, and so now that would be one reason to revisit that and be like, oh yeah, no, the story behind this is that I found it in a junk pile.
Yeah, that's true.
And grimy. So I don't know about you, but or your son, but I like to make up stories around the things that I build, right? So like that thing, the story behind that thing is like I hacked into it and it was pristine condition when I hacked into it and I kind of kept up with it.
Cool. Okay.
Whereas like a control panel like this one that you see up there was maybe less. It's pulled out of a certain design, and so it differs from the design of this one. And I don't know. You make up stories around it, so that way it feels more real.
Cool. Yeah. It's I don't know whether Leo does that or not. He tends to lock himself in his bedroom, and we don't. He's turned into that teenagery thing that you don't see very often. You just throw food at it occasionally, and so you've got all that to come. So I won't spoil it too much for you.
Oh yeah, no. Who was I talking with earlier this week about different phases of fatherhood? It's like. At some point you're always a father, but at some point they kind of like leave and come back and leave and come back, and it's like I don't know if I'm ready for that now, but we're in the phase where while I'm working, he says, "Daddy, play monster trucks," and I will say I've built this massive. So I got the 3D printer set back up again. And I printed out some custom Hot Wheels parts.
Oh, cool.
So that way we can do like turns and stuff, because turns are very hard to come by. But I can print them out for like pennies. So why not? Now the problem is that these turns, we want them elevated, and finding a surface in which they can be elevated is a little difficult. So why not anchor them to the wall? So now we have a big long Hot Wheels track that goes from one end of our living room to the other, turns against a 45 degree against a wall. So I had to do some custom 3D modeling, do the 45 degree, so that way it would meet it at a certain degree, turn 90, and head off in the other direction. So I've done all those calculations. I printed out the things, anchored them to a wall, and then it goes down his slide and does a loop-de-loop at the end. And I've made it a double track, so that way he can put his monster trucks on it and send them across. And I've done calculations with how high one side needs to be versus the other side, so that way they can carry through the turn and down the ramp, but not so fast so that they fall over. I would say 90% of the cars make it through the turn, but the 10% that don't really frustrate him.
Right. Okay.
Daddy, play monster trucks. That's the phase I'm in right now.
Well, that's quite. We sort of been through that to a certain extent. I guess the phase we're in now is eldest daughter about to go to university, so that's a scary phase. So she's into the we're literally having them discussions of she's leaving home and all that sort of stuff. And it's all worked for us on two levels, because she's not only leaving home from the family and all that stuff, but she's also now she works for us as well. So she's now on the K-Sharp team. And so we having that discussion about does she want to keep on working for us while she's at university, rather than getting a job at a local shop or something like that. So I think sensibly she is going to stay working for us, but we don't. But it's having all them discussions. And they're very grown-up discussions to have with your children, I think. So we shall see how it goes.
Yeah. Well,
I'm obsessively yawning now, so I'll have to apologize for doing that.
Yeah, I'm not quite there yet. I'm still pretty high energy comparatively, which is good.
But then still morning for you, isn't it?
No,
what time are you at?
It's like 4 p.m.
Okay, cool. See, this whole... Oh, actually, I've set this up, so I should just be able to hover... Oh, it's gone. Oh, it's because I've switched laptops back again. Because I had it set up with your time, so if I hover over the time, it would come up with your time just there, so I could actually work out what it was. But since I bought myself a new shiny laptop, like an i9 or all that sort of stuff, but it just wasn't as responsive to my screen configurations and stuff that my i7 is, and so I've gone back to I've sort of gone back to my older laptop, and we're keeping the more powerful laptop for the graphic designy type stuff, which is what it was bought for, to be fair. But I'm quite happy back with my old. But some of the changes I'd made to it, I need to go make to this configuration. So it's all very complicated, but fundamentally the basic story is I've gone back to my old laptop.
Yeah. Hey, blast from the past here. I'm going through our captions and cleaning some of them up, and I found this little gem.
Oh yeah.
I might keep that for novelty's sake.
I was going to say no. I think yes. No, I think that should stay around.
Yeah.
That's one thing I haven't got really into doing properly with my show, is using captions and stuff.
Oh yeah.
I probably should. So.
Yeah, I mean, you probably notice if you watch the video version, I've not been keeping up with it too great. I used to get into a groove where I'd press a play a video, right, like the news or something, and then get into the caption, and then move back to the video. But since I've just been getting sloppy about it, I need to get better about it. It improves the quality of the show, I think. So I've not used Back in a Moment in a while. We can get rid of that one. Oh, I have to hide these to get rid of them. All right, so we'll get rid of Back in a Moment. Or did I just get rid of Post Show? I think I just got rid of Post Show. Oops. We'll just we'll do this then.
So I do use that occasionally.
Yeah. Post Show. Let's do that. So Back in a Moment is not there. Buy our merch. I should have used that tonight. There you go. There's a link. Buy our merch. I'll keep 2021 recap because it'll get us into. Oh, geez, no, I'm yawning. Oh,
sorry,
no.
My fault.
Contagious. You sniped me from.
That's a long distance snipe.
That is a long distance snipe. we don't really use these stream starting soons anymore. We used to use them. I think those can go. We used to use those for like office hours, and
Okay.
we don't really do those much more. And office hours is still there too. I'll get rid of those. But yeah, now the most important one is still there, so we'll just keep that one.
Still makes me laugh. Well, you can completely see it. It's just you can certainly with that sort of environment, the type of people who become astronauts, you can absolutely see it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Notice I've improved my setup so you can't see that I'm sponsored by Rode anymore.
Oh great, yeah, no, I noticed that.
It's now way down here, and it's because I've re-altered the angles, and so I'm still trying to get a hold of this bit here is still slightly known because you're still in sort of short. But if I get the angle of this just about right, then it kind of works. But it's I was very pleased with that.
Yes, not sponsored by Rode.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
No, unless they wanted to and they're listening, then obviously I think we would take anything they would throw at us.
Well,
but,
you know what? We do have a show sponsor Patreon tier for anyone who does want to sponsor us.
And we're only slightly fussy.
What's that?
We're only slightly fussy.
Yeah, well, you know what? I think I honestly think it's a fair value for what you get. And you know what? If Rode wants us to read something every week, we certainly will.
I'll just wait here for the message to come in from them. Because I'm sure they're just waiting. So
yeah. Man, I really hope you're able to make the lab meeting tomorrow. I got some really fun stuff to talk about that I can't say live.
Fair enough. I said, I should. It depends where I'm at, because like I said, this count happens at.
You got to be present for the count.
Pardon?
You got to be present for the count.
I don't have to be. In fact, my opponent isn't going to be because she came down with COVID yesterday, which obviously I feel very sorry for her and all that sort of thing. But I did have a little laugh as well. So generally, yeah, you're at the count. You're generally there for the announcement, and so I will have to stand there all on my own. And try and either look really, really happy, but not too happy, so I don't want to look smug, or not to look too downcast, depending on whether it's depending on which way the vote goes. You do have a slight advantage that you do know the result before it's announced, so
you can leave the building and just kind of hide your face in shame if it's.
Well, yeah, but it's more about being, I guess, you've got minutes to understand whether how to set your face. I think, and to give your because you have to agree. One of the nice things I like about it is when you watch the count is it is democracy being played out in front of you. There is you can see each individual vote being turned and counted and all that sort of stuff. So there is nowhere to hide in that respect. We hear lots from conspiracy theorists about how it's all rigged and there's bucketfuls of votes and stuff. Well, it can't be, because you see you see every single part of it. But when everything's counted, you have to agree that everybody agrees that the numbers that have come up with are the numbers that have come up with. So that's where you get into recounts and stuff. So when you're all happy, then you obviously know what the result is because you've all just agreed it, and then they go and do the public announcement. So there is still on Facebook, you can still find the announcement of the last time I won an election, because my dad, bless him, recorded it on through his phone, and it still sits there in Facebook and somewhere. So yeah, no, that's it is quite an interesting time. But when I stood for to be a member of Parliament here in the UK, I knew that I'd come second before it was announced, and I had to. You almost have to stand there as if you can't imitate shock, because you obviously know what the result is, but you can't sort of look like you didn't know what was coming, because you clearly did. But yeah, it's an interesting situation all by yourself.
It almost feels like a simple nod is all you need to,
Yeah, I mean, really, it's about. I think it's about having dignity around the process.
Yes,
So,
yeah.
you know, if you do the whole thing of storming out before, because you could just leave, you could just go, but actually that doesn't show the respect to the process. You've got to. There is a lot about being a good loser, and I think you learn a lot about people's character in how they lose in on an occasion like this, as much as when they win. Because, and I don't, it is, I guess there is an element of it being a slightly British thing as well, but you should be stiff upper lip when losing. And then if you're winning, you don't go too over the top. You know, you can obviously celebrate, but you also need to be respectful of the people who didn't win, and make sure you don't make them feel too bad, unless you really didn't like them. But as long as everybody's taken part in the process and done it respectfully, then yeah, it's all good. So,
Yeah.
but we'll see what sort of mood I'm in tomorrow, and if I either lose really badly or win amazingly, then we'll see how smug or distraught I am at the time.
Well, I certainly hope that you're not distraught.
No, I don't think no matter what the result, really. I think as long as you can say that you put in as much effort as you could, then it's people's opinion, and it is what it is. Being a sort of, it is a voluntary position, so though you do get you don't get a salary as such, but you do get an amount of money per month to offset the amount of effort you're putting in. But it's not a salary. They're very keen to saying that. So you get, so it's like an allowance, I guess. So you do get that, but fundamentally, yeah, it's you very few people do it for the money, because it's not enough to do that. So it is.
Yeah, sure.
It is very much a you're doing it because you want to do it. So, in most people's cases, it is anyway. The one that always makes me most amused is when people have. I mean, do you have the term a paper candidate over there? So somebody who just stands to. Yeah. So yeah. And so we have quite a few of them here. And I've known a few of my friends actually who've done that and actually been elected when they didn't expect to be. And they're like, I don't want to be doing this job. I just did it. So we had a candidate on the paper, which is why I don't believe in paper candidates.
Yeah.
Oh
man. Well, I'm probably getting way down a rabbit hole here, but I'm like researching your opponent and I'm looking at what's out there on the internet.
Oh, right. Okay. It was also quite a respectful campaign until today. So generally, it's always been quite good, because I'm fairly comparatively new to this area and stuff. Then, but then a supporter of mine, she's like, "Can I put some of your?" So we've got some of the the waterproof posters with vote for my party on it. And there's like, oh, have you got anything like vote Barry or vote for your party or anything like that that we can put in our field, and we'll nail them to the trees in our field, which is right beside one of the main roads in the village. And I was like, as it happens, I do. And so I had a stash of these vote posters, and which are on Corex, so they're plastic, so they're waterproof and stuff. And so that was fine. So I dropped them off and said, look, do what you want with them, just make sure they stay on your land and all that sort of stuff, and all will be fine. So they went to put them out this morning, and I had quite a few comments from people saying, oh, I've just seen all your vote labels. That's brilliant, as they were driving to and from work and to the shops and all that sort of stuff. Remember to vote. Thank you very much. That's brilliant. And then I got a message saying, they've all gone. And basically somebody from the opposition had come and ripped them all down from the trees and stolen them. And which was a bit of a shame, considering we got through the entire the election period all being quite pleasant and quite nice to each other. And then they start the dirty tricks on the day of the election, which I was like, most people have made their mind up now, and you're not actually going to help your own case here.
Right. Yeah.
But there we go. And it's very it's a weird one, because this is not a left versus right argument.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's so many parties that like here we have two choices because of the way our system works. It's terrible. But yeah, it feels like there's maybe not so much disagreement in ideology, if that's fair to say, but more it's more political than ideology, where here the two are married very closely.
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, you've got Democrats versus Republicans. Here we generally have that with your Labour versus Conservative on the UK level. But because I live in Wales, they have their own parliament, which is called the Senedd. And in here, so this is where we start to see nationalism. So you have what they call Plaid Cymru, which is the National Party of Wales, and so they want to see Wales basically properly devolve away from the UK. They want to become, their own country. So we're not the United Kingdom anymore. Wales is Wales. In a similar, and yes, very very much. And in a similar way that Scotland wants the same. And so that's the difference in today's election. Was it was just me as a left-wing Labour candidate, and Plaid Cymru is also left-leaning as well. But the main difference between us is they want independence and we don't. So yeah, it's really interesting. It became a lot more of a personal vote. Do you like the candidates? And there was lots of people who didn't like the current incumbent for a whole bunch of reasons. So yeah, it's that's why in many ways it's quite a difficult one to call, because if you're doing it on ideology, then actually it's almost a draw. It more depends on how you feel about nationalism, but also how you feel about the individual people and what they've been up to. So
yeah, it's
interesting.
It's very interesting. And man, it's like I don't know. I tend to try to stay away from politics on the show just because I feel like, one, it sort of triggers me in a lot of ways to go down rabbit holes that I feel like are what's what I'm looking for. Not acceptable. They're fine to go down. It just detracts from the content that we're trying to communicate.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like I am pretty far left. Like that is where I'm at. Like and so the fact that, my choices are here in the States are between somebody who's like center left and somebody who's, far right. It's like, well, of course I'm going to choose the one that's closer ideologically to me, but wish we had a little bit more choice, but understanding that the system doesn't work like that, and the way that we have things set up is not really conducive to that. Ranked choice voting solves some of those problems, but not, from an institutional perspective where, there's kind of this big tent with the left, and then there's kind of the wealthy. I don't know how to put this. I have very negatively held opinions of the right as well. Like,
it is interesting because I think we could probably do an entire human factors politics cast, for example, something like that. Because I think there is. I did let's see. Can we go as far as a white paper? I did a bit of a paper on the correlation between people on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs and how they vote. And the idea being that my initial hypothesis was that people who are right leaning generally are wealthier and that type of thing. So therefore they're higher on Maslow's hierarchy of needs because they've got all of their fundamental needs met. They're very outward looking and all that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore people on the left are at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy needs because they tend to be the working class. They tend to be the people who are trying to work out how they're going to do the bills at the end of the month, etc., etc. And actually, the research I found that wasn't quite the case, which I thought was interesting.
Well, because you have the quote unquote liberal elite.
Well, it wasn't. It was the. So we've gone through a spell, certainly in the Labour Party, of having different leaders, and a lot of it's around where the that middle class. Where do they come and do? So it is that not necessarily liberal elite, but definitely that middle class piece who can be afford to be a bit more outlooking. It's actually they who vote more for the left wing stuff. There was a whole chunk of people who are the working class or the lower classes who vote right wing, but not because they think they're the right people to rule, but it's because they think that they could be there one day. And it's the voting of aspiration, the voting of where they would love to be, not where they are and what would benefit them. And there is a whole load of stuff around that is just really fascinating to tie yourself up into. And it's really nice that we've actually got a couple of comments in the chat.
Yeah, I saw them. Bring them up here. There can Loch Ness. I'm sorry. My thing is blocking it. It says Loch-Alecha. I think I know who this is. There can be a political impact on science in general, though. So I don't think it's inappropriate to bring those up on those. I can't read. To bring up those related streams.
Yeah.
No, I agree, and I think we do bring them up on the show when it makes sense to do so.
Yes.
When policy directly is impacted by human factors, or vice versa, when human factors is impacted by policy. I think that's absolutely right. I think the thing that I'm talking about here, when not bringing up politics, is that I can get so fired up about political views sometimes that I'm just like, I start cussing, and it's just like this. It's not a great look for a professional podcast, I get very heated, and unless I have my thoughts kind of written out, they can be kind of incoherent sometimes.
Yeah, I think there's definitely that bit around. I think there is coming together of psychology, politics, HF politics, all that sort of stuff, and in around influencing people, around people's attitudes, and that stuff is really interesting. I love all of that sort of stuff. So I've done a fair bit of work around how you influence people, like through social media and things like that. Loch-Alecha. There we go.
Loch-Alecha. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, that.
I love the concept, and again, like if I have my thoughts written out, I can certainly do that. And I think, you and I, Barry, have been talking about several different ideas behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. That's what the lab's for. Let's add this to the list as a scripted idea, because I would love to explore this further. And it could be pretty cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Oh, but for now,
right, hey, it's time. Yeah, it's time. You go.
I'm going to go to bed because it's been a while since I've been in my bed, and my bed's calling me. So, is there a HFE presence in any form of government policy?
Yes, there is.
The US.
Yep. So I'll leave everybody watching, listening with. So we did an interview with Micah Inslee, who is on the Government Relations Committee, and it's kind of a formal position where she advocates for human factors in policy and government. And we talked about this at the most recent HFES presidential town hall as well. She was there talking about government outreach, and so there is an officially held. It's not an elected position. It's kind of assigned. She's kind of our liaison to the government through HFES, the U.S. government, I should say. I don't know. Does it exist in the UK at all? Do you know?
Not in the same way, but we do have a couple of people who have been promoted or have been in positions that have a really great HF background that do influence government policy, or at least the way that government works. We need more of that. But to have an official liaison is something that I want to be looking at in my role of president. So we shall see how that works.
Yes, plenty to look forward to. All right, we're going to get out of here for tonight. Thank you all so much, especially those who have been joining us live. Really appreciate your presence. and your contributions to the discussion tonight. We'll be back next week to talk about something fun, presumably. I usually do a preview of things, but I don't have that prepared. So we'll see you then. And best of luck, Barry. Maybe you'll be a twice elected official, a doubly elected president-elect. And
we shall see, and I'll let you all know tomorrow.
All right.
Have fun,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.